Every single thing that surrounds us today, at one point, did not exist. It was impossible. So, then the inverse must be true, which is everything that is impossible today is on the trajectory of becoming possible. Now, it might not be this moment, this lifetime, but it's gonna happen.
One night I had this strange dream. I was walking through downtown Los Angeles in the future. It was a filthy, overcrowded mega metropolis. Even in a situation of seemingly no hope, a spark of creativity and beauty existed. I never took anything for granted. Because you never know when everything will be taken from you. But they can take my memories. I was 10, and my family had just moved to East Los Angeles. And there was this sewer tunnel down the block. It was the first time I ever used spray paint, and it felt amazing.
He knew what to do with the Gothic letters to make them strong and powerful and put the muscle in it. That's what I admired about TEMPT. His letters were gorgeous.
He just has a facility with his hand and a can or a marker, how he would design certain letters to make his name stand apart. TEMPT is an important player in the history of Los Angeles graffiti.
I'm not from the world of graffiti. I love art, but I don't really have an appreciation or knowledge of this type of art.
Mick Ebeling, I met him. We were doing one of the first big fundraisers for TEMPT and ALS.
ALS is a neurological condition where nerve cells die, causing full paralysis.
We happened to choose to go to this event, and by doing so, it led to me realizing the power of letting one human being truly affect your life in a deep and meaningful way.
Tony said, "Dad, we have a talk." And he says to me, "I want you to know I'm going to fight this disease, and the people that are around me have to be people who do not believe I'm going to die."
I think being an artist, being creative in these kinds of situations, I believe it helps. There's a benefit. Our initial will to create from nothing, I think he was just hopeful that something would change.
So I ended up sitting across from TEMPT's father and brother, and his brother said, "I just want to talk to my brother again. I just want to be able to communicate with him." And to me, that was the first time that I had even contemplated that someone who was paralyzed wasn't able to communicate. He told me that they talked through a piece of paper, that they would hold a piece of paper up, would run their finger along it, and when their finger would get to a letter, TEMPT would blink, and then they would start again. I caught my breath and took a minute and said, "Let's do something different. Why don't I get you one of those Stephen Hawking machines?"
I was surprised mainly because I thought, here's this stranger who is being friendly, is taking an interest in becoming friends with my friend. That a stranger was invested in another stranger, I thought was an amazing thing.
It was adjusted to the proper height, the proper distance for TEMPT.
First time I met him was after he had the machine. I did not want to meet him until I came through.
When I first met Mick, I thought he was a little nuts, but nutty in a good way.
I said, "Well, wait, why don't we do this? If there's a device that we can get him that allows him to move his eyes back and forth, and then that moves a cursor on a screen to select the letters that makes the robot talk, then why don't we figure out how he can move his eyes back and forth across the screen that moves the cursor, and that lets him draw again?" And they said, "You could do that?" What the heck did I just commit to? Well, I'm not a doctor, I'm not an engineer, I've got no training in this, but I gotta figure out how this guy can draw again. I ended up meeting the founders of Graffiti Research Lab. They created this interface with a laser pointer that you could draw in the light. Why don't we figure out how to get TEMPT to control that laser pointer with his eyes, and then he can draw again.
I mean, I do remember those conversations, but, you know, we didn't know if it could be done or not.
These guys flew in from all over the world. They all descended upon our house. All the tables and chairs got pushed against the wall. My wife and kids moved out into the little place in the back. They just took over. And we just dogpiled on it with a bunch of mad scientists and misfit geniuses to try to come up with the solution. What they were doing was so above me that keeping them on track was more of a conceptual thing than actually knowing what the heck they were doing.
Dude, this isn't even stranded wire, and it said stranded on the... No, it didn't. It's solid. That sucks.
Hacker and maker culture, you do whatever you need to do to make it.
Seeing what goes on with prototyping, with programmers and hackers, total artists in a totally different way, but artists nonetheless.
We had been working and working and working, and this was it. It's the last night. There was no tomorrow because everybody was flying back and they had tickets to go back from all over the world. And all of his family and friends gathered downstairs in the parking lot, just downstairs from the hospital.
Who's the TRL guy? This is TRL. These are wacky dudes. James.
So there was a handful of people in the room. There was a gang of people downstairs. People were taking turns with the laser pointer, drawing on the wall. Then, we got the signal from upstairs that the next person drawing was TEMPT.
Is he drawing his name?
Yeah. He's drawing those with his eyes.
Grown men hooping and hollering. That night was singular, absolutely.
This guy who had had his passion ripped away from him had now been given it back.
Feels like taking a breath after being held underwater for 5 minutes.
At the time, I had a company called the Ebeling Group. We were an animation production company. We had offices all over the world. I woke up every day knowing exactly what I needed to do. But I knew that somehow I had to keep figuring out how to use technology to help people. I'd love to sit here and tell you that, yeah, I totally had it all figured out. I was scared. I was really scared. But Geronimo, here we go. Let's just start going out into the world and looking for things that have to be solved, and let's commit to figuring it out. And so that's what we did. If you want to change the world, it starts by questioning things that are absurd. Since the Eyewriter, we tackled the absurdity around the deaf not being able to experience music. We figured out how to take music, break it into its separate parts, and beam that to specific parts of the skin. So we've created the skin as the eardrum. And we're experimenting with technological, non-pharmaceutical ways to help people with tremors. We've set up the world's first 3D printing prosthetic laboratory and made an arm that allowed a young boy who had both of his arms blown off, made an arm that allowed him to feed himself for the first time in 2 years. We cause people to say, we can take matters into our own hands and we're gonna take this solution and iterate on it and make it better and have that scale.
Some levels, it validates that we are good people. This is like a very simple, human to human, we look out for each other, period.
I think that's the whole point of Not Impossible. Don't sit back and wait for someone else to go do it. You gotta go do it yourself. Because if you don't, who will?